We're talking about technology today. We're talking about how to keep up with tech innovation, artificial intelligence, whatever. And it's not about the actual tech, it's about how to prepare yourself for a world that is increasingly changing unbelievably fast to the point where if you try to keep up with the actual technology, it's just an impossible task. And so, what do you do? And so the end of this podcast, the end of this what I'm going to be talking about, I don't know how far at the end it's going to be because it depends how many conversations we have getting there. But I'm going to actually there's two basically categories of either things to do or skills to learn. One of them I think is unbelievably important, but it's one of those things that cannot be measured in any way. And so it's very difficult to talk about. And as I've been writing this book, a message that keeps coming up over and over and over again is the difference between information that's easy to teach versus information that's actually useful. And what we find in a lot of particularly business books or courses or guru type advice, particularly in short form snippets, is that things that are easier to teach are made out to look like they're much more important than they are because they're more present. Things like the frills of the social media, right? Like, what does your thumbnail on your image look like? What does the caption say? What all of this versus like actually what's much more important is the quality of the work and the community and the customer service that you provide over the long term. But you can't teach that in a 13-second video. And so the stuff that you can teach, hey, here's one weird trick to make your image look like this to convert better, is at the forefront. So the first category is stuff that you really can't teach that easily, and we'll talk about that. But the second category is like, all right, here are the skills that are actually going to be very, very important moving forward. Understanding that computers are way better than humans in some things. And if you work to up-level the skills that a computer is already good at, you're working on the wrong thing, because no matter how good you get, the computer is just going to be better than you. So this is actually a new chapter that is going into the book, and the chapter's called Algorithms Change, Humans Don't. Kind of get where I'm going with here. But there's two problems, the way that I see it. The first problem is that it's become impossible to navigate the overwhelming amount of information out there. And the second problem is it's become impossible to trust the people who produce the information. The ironic part of this all is that as technology continues to progress and we zoom towards a trustless world, the ultimate business advantage is actually to double down on what makes us human, which is connection, creativity, and empathy. Because if you don't, what you're doing is you're doubling down on what makes us more efficient, what makes us more like computers, and dumb shits is going to be done better than computers anyway. But at the end of the day, the more our world changes, the more it's the same thing. And I think you'll get that message as we talk about this. So I've told this story before. If you've been listening to the podcast for a while, you've heard it before, but I'm going to tell it again a little bit differently because I think it's a very useful story. So in 2022, I hired an urban vegetable gardening consultant. During the day, he worked in business development for this large multinational. He worked basically a regular job. He's actually an engineer by trade, but he worked in like a middle management for this large multinational. And he just turned 40 years old. Consulting was a new venture for him. It was a side gig, but it's taken off. Now, our neighborhood has an online community. It has 212 members. This is a Facebook group, but it has an online community with 212 neighbors. And it's stuff like, hey, does anybody know a good recommendation for this? Hey, my car got stolen out of my driveway. Does anybody have video on their cams around this time or whatever, that kind of stuff. So to find help for the garden, I asked if anybody knew somebody for hire, and nobody had a referral. One person recommended a website to me called thespruce.com. And so I went to the website. The banner atop their site promoted 19,000 original photos and 2,000 how-to projects that were all blog posts. So as I write this, just for context, there's roughly 40 trillion gigabytes of information on the internet. That's such a massive number. It's like every time we ask Calvin, like, Calvin, what do you think this is? He's like, 1,000,000 million. I'm like, I don't think you quite comprehend how big that number is, Calvin.
It's a valid number,
So
though.
it's a valid number. He loves 1,000,000 of things. So 40 trillion gigabytes is the equivalent of a 14 billion year long high def video. To give you an idea of how big that is.
It's frightening for some reason.
It's frightening, right? So much information is. Here's the thing, though. The paradoxical result of infinite content is that it becomes harder to use, not easier. Yuval Noah Harari, author of *Sapiens*, famous historian, Israeli historian, began one of his books by saying, like, this is the first line of the book. He said, "In a world deluged by irrelevant information, clarity is power." Clarity is power. Anything you want to know is out there. I promise you. The problems are knowing what questions to ask, finding the answer, and trusting the source delivering it. So by this point in the process, all that he knew about gardening was that dirt was somehow involved. I didn't know what kind of veggies I wanted. I didn't know how to assess the soil quality, or even that soil quality was a thing to be considered. My summed up thoughts as a result, clicking through this website, clicking through the Spruce website, was ain't nobody got time for this shit. Nobody I trusted could refer me a consultant. So I closed my browser. I was forced to Google Toronto Urban Vegetable Gardening Coach. And I found a few websites for services. I didn't read a thing on any of the websites. I just sent them all an email. Then I found an Instagram account. I didn't look at a single post because who gives a shit what the Instagram account says about measuring soil quality. I didn't even know that that mattered. All I knew was that I wanted to grow vegetables. I didn't even know which one. So I just sent a message. I didn't look at any of it. And everybody responded. They came to my house and then they sent a proposal afterwards. I had no idea how to compare any of the proposals because I don't know anything about this thing. So I picked the guy that I liked the most. And Luai Ghaffari showed up at my house again 2 days later to analyze the soil, look at sunlight, and discuss a planting schedule. Trying to keep up with technology and algorithm changes is hard, edging on impossible, isn't it? So what I want to talk about here, I want to help you kind of figure out where all of this is headed and help you prepare by focusing on the skills necessary to thrive in an algorithm-driven world. But it's not focusing on the technology. This is not about tech. It's about humans, because no matter how much technology changes or evolves, humans have proven to be incredibly consistent. And it's humans, after all, who use the technology. And so this is about what comes first. You can try to keep up and figure out how all of the tech works and try to get ahead that way. Good fucking luck. Maybe you can do it. I don't know. I certainly can't. But even if you're ahead today, you're going to be behind tomorrow because there's so many smart people working on this stuff all of the time. And it's algorithmic and it's working 24/7 because it's computers. And by the way, there's millions of computers all communicating to one another in real time all the time. So it's not just one computer. It's all of the computers doing their work, right? Communicating and sharing information. That's just not a game that I want to play. And the only way that I have figured out to mitigate, to solve, to get ahead with this problem is let's just largely ignore that problem or deal with it when I have to. But if I'm going to deal with it, I need to come into that understanding what I'm trying to do and going specifically to that area first. And the only way that I figured out how to do that is to say, let's learn how humans operate and how humans are going to use this tech first, because they're the ones who are going to be using it anyway. So I don't trust the internet anymore. 2021 Nielsen Trust in Advertising study agrees with me. Nielsen's one of the biggest market research firms. It showed that 88% of people trust recommendations from people they know, like word of mouth. Right? Less than 1/4 of everybody asked in the study, and it was tens of thousands of people, said they trusted anything any influencer said. Less than one quarter. They also, it was about the same percentage. I don't have the exact number. It was 23% of people, so less than one quarter. But I don't have the exact percentage of this, but it was about the same. Said that they actually trusted a company's website far more than they trusted whatever an influencer said about that company. I mean, but like none of this is new. Like, look at what's happening in politics. Look at what's happening in the media. Like as tech progresses, as we become decentralized, and all these places that we used to trust as gatekeepers to bring us information, as those are all broken down, trust in online media continues to shrink at a deafening pace. It's going to continue. Like nothing's going to change with this. Whether you like it or not is irrelevant. AI can spit out entire blog posts, social media updates, video scripts in a fraction of a second. Not only that, AI can create an avatar, have it present the script, and upload that video to the net with a single prompt. Also, computer code doesn't age or gain weight, and it can be designed to be better looking than you. It'll never have a bad day, and it's always in a good mood. Already, there's fake social media influencers that have amassed huge followings. They're mostly social experiments. They won't always be. And already, there are cases where it's very difficult to tell the humans from the computer code online. But it's not just completely fake stuff. Real influencers and their reputations aren't immune from this either. I saw a video with two of the biggest health influencers in the world. It was Joe Rogan and Andrew Huberman. And they were talking back and forth in their podcast studios about penis pills. And they first spoke about the problem of confidence in young men with smaller penises, then the incredible scientific advances in the area down under. And then they finished by telling you where to buy the pill bottle to get these penis pills step by step, reading the domain out loud as the screen went to the website and showed you how to check out. Joe Rogan was literally walking you through the steps to check out and buy penis pills. Now, you might have already guessed. The video was fake. It's not actually them speaking. It's called a deep fake, and it was done without their permission. And it was done as a social experiment this time. Artificial intelligence replaced their lips and voices. Now, if you really knew what you were looking for, and because you knew it was a social experiment, you could tell. But A, this tech is going to continually get better. B, if you didn't know it was a social experiment, you still already might have been tricked. Right now, one of the top health podcasts is not read by a human. The team behind Arnold Schwarzenegger's podcast spent months training an AI engine with his voice. I know this because I'm very good friends with the person in charge of his entire media company. And this AI engine machine can now realistically read anything by him, which is really fucking funny because of the Terminator. But like, talk about being present and like predicting the future. Listen to his podcast, man. Not now. Don't turn off, please. God, don't turn. We need that long listening for don't turn off this. I take that back. When this is done another time after you've listened to every episode of this podcast, go listen to that podcast and see if you can tell. I'm told that the Terminator himself cannot tell the difference between his voice and the machine-generated one. Now, Arnie's using this for good, right? It's a way for him to build leverage and help more people. But it's easy to see how this could be used for nefarious purposes, couldn't it? Like, if his team can train an AI engine, so can anybody else. There's thousands of hours of audio and video from Arnold Schwarzenegger freely available on the internet. From his movies to YouTube to everything. All it would take would be for somebody with ill intent to feed all of that information into their own AI engine to teach this AI his speech patterns, accent, intonations. And what's to stop them then from using that same technology to promote, I don't know, like untested steroid stuff sold on the dark web towards impressionable young men who the penis pills didn't work for? I don't know. But
Oh my god.
I don't know.
There's a there's a class action lawsuit somewhere there. Have you been recently tricked by Arnold Schwarzenegger into growing your penis? Have you been damaged by the growth of your penis? Do your underpants no longer fit? Call 888-000 penis lawsuit settlement.
Did you successfully grow your penis? And then realize that in order for somebody to be impressed by your penis, you have to have the confidence
Oh
for
my
them to want
gosh.
you to take off your pants. Well,
Oh
here
my
is a
god.
dating app for you.
Did you terminate your spouse or partner with your penis? You'd be entitled to cash. I'm sorry. I can't help it. It's where my brain goes. I'll be quiet. I would mute my mic, but apparently that doesn't work anymore.
How big of a penis do you really need to? At a certain point, I feel like you're not actually solving the problem.
Nobody asked for that.
So, but at a certain, like all of this to be said, I'm not. This isn't an ethics conversation. To me, ethics not the point.
Right.
To me, the point is that there's no way to control what's happening. It's that Pandora's box has been opened, and it's that this is moving so fast that there's no hope to police it. That trust online is rapidly trending towards zero, and I will be the first to admit that I want to move into a forest far away from the world because I'm scared. Aspects of this are very scary. Fears surrounding mysterious technological innovation uprooting our way of life and causing job displacement, though, are both totally reasonable and nothing new. So, as I put some notes in the book, all right. This is why I
Those
like
notes
reading
in,
this
John.
stuff.
Get that down.
And when I say they're nothing new, I'm going to tell you a story to prove that they're nothing new. Johannes Gutenberg, in 1436, invented something called the printing press. His financial partner, Johann Faust, I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that right. Sorry,
It's all right.
Germans. Johann Faust, his financial partner, was charged as a witch. The scribes of Paris. Yeah, that's a line that I never thought that I would say.
Oh my god.
The scribes of Paris feared a loss of jobs and went on strike in the 1440s
Wow.
to protest the use of the printing press. Printers' apprentices became known as the printer's devil. Now, with the benefit of hindsight, we know how this story ends, right? The spread of more affordable and reliable literature led to an information revolution, led to the Renaissance throughout Europe. 500 plus years after he died in 1999, Gutenberg's named the man of the millennium. Now, despite this initial damning response, it was only like 50 years after the invention, which 50 years in our lifetime is a hell of a long time, but in the course of history is nothing, right? 50 years after its invention, the benefits were pretty clear. So there's a German author, Sebastian Brandt, in the year 1500. Here's what he said. He said, "In our time, thanks to the talent and industry of those from the Rhine, books have emerged in lavish numbers. A book that once would have belonged to the rich, nay, to a king, can now be seen under a modest roof. There is nothing nowadays that our children fail to know." Look, in retrospect, the benefits are obvious, aren't they? Without the printing press, I wouldn't be writing a book, which I'm reading on the podcast, and you wouldn't be listening to it unless you're a king, in which day, good day, Your Highness. Professor Daniel Gilbert, who wrote a fabulous book called Stumbling on Happiness, one of the first books of that genre that I read and made a really big impact on me. He calls this the end of history illusion. Humans have a tendency to simultaneously accept that things changed in the past, but act like things won't change in the future. Perhaps this is why, in the moment, because the only moment we're ever in is this moment, nothing ever feels silly, does it? But after that moment passes and you're in a new moment and you know now what you know, you'll look back and wonder how you could have been such a dummy. That, or you won't admit that before you were kind of an idiot. You'll claim it's true that you were one of the rarefied few who knew all along. That's what most of us do. Anyway. The French historian Voltaire, yeah, I'm going way back with all these references, dude.
It's all right, man.
The French historian Voltaire once wrote, "History never repeats itself, but man always does." Because throughout history, virtually every technological innovation has been met with the same response, which is a combination of fear of the unknown and worries about job displacement. Mm-hmm. So here, too, today, where we are, everything is new, but nothing is different. As I write this, the research firm McKinsey estimates that there's going to be 800 million global workers that are going to be displaced by automation and forced to find new jobs by the year 2030. I personally think this is a good thing. Because, yeah, the great resignation is underway, but technology doesn't displace jobs, it evolves them. Innovations bring in a new kind of opportunity. And in this case, what's happening is that people are leaving unrewarding jobs that they hate and pursuing passions that they love, which I think is quite wonderful. So let's revisit the story that began this chapter. And to me, the obvious choice business model of the future is going to consist of people like me wanting to grow veggies, hiring people like Luai, who, by the way, has now quit his unfulfilling job in business development for a large multinational, to pursue his passion of urban vegetable gardening full-time. Luai charges $175 an hour. He only has to work 11.5 hours a week to make $100,000 a year. So based off of what I paid him, he'd need 35 customers to profitably make $100,000. His only expenses are payment processing, taxes, and gas. And in his spare time, what do you think he does? He films videos, he volunteers at the community gardens, and he's published a cookbook called Seed to Table, a seasonal guide to organically growing, cooking, and preserving food at home. What do we talk about in this podcast? You don't actually need to work with a lot of people, and the content stuff is a savings account that you invest into when you have excess time and capital. Luai's built an audience of like 100,000 people on Instagram. It's because he has excess time and capital to do this work, and he got a publishing deal and did a book and all that kind of stuff. This is the new business model. Okay. Now that we're rightfully optimistic about a purposeful and not scary future, the logical question that follows is how you can make it happen, right, Ren?
Pretty much.
It's a complicated question because the answer is going to be different for everybody listening. So I want to start this kind of part of it with a thought experiment. There's going to be a few thought experiments here. First one. Imagine you're at a big parade. The crowd's packed in. Nobody can see. Okay? One person has the idea to stand on his tiptoes. Now, for a few seconds it works. They have a good view. Then everybody else stands on their tiptoes to get a better view, and what happens next, according to the investor Warren Buffett, is that your view doesn't improve, but your legs begin to hurt. Every time that tech presents a new way to market or create content, it seems like an immediate winner. And by standard measures, it's often better than what you were doing before. It's a more scalable way to reach people, an easier way to entertain, a new filter to be more attractive, a better algorithm, whatever. The problem isn't that it doesn't work. The problem is that it works the same for everybody. Mm-hmm. So viewed individually, it often makes sense to use, but when you view it collectively, everybody's use neutralizes everybody else's. By all playing the same game, we make it harder for anybody to win that game. So what initially looks like an advantage, unfortunately, results in us all working more and benefiting less. Yes, it's true that social media is an incredible way for you to reach people. Me too. And it's also true that technology allows you to precisely target users with advertisements. Me too. And also, yes, it is true that artificial intelligence is a fantastic way for you to create huge amounts of content. Same. Right now, there's 491 million posts with the hashtag fitness on Instagram. Do you really fucking think that the solution to getting more customers is to somehow outdo them all by producing hashtag fitness post 491 million and one? Nah, dude. Marketing to humans these days has become so inhuman, hasn't it? Counterintuitively, what appears to be improved scalability, production quality, reach results in increased competition and commoditization. If you can do it, so can everybody else. With every new tool you have to use or you'll miss out, the problem gets worse. We all start at the same parade, but maybe the answer isn't to try and stand a bit taller. Maybe the answer is to find your own parade. I want to talk about the skills necessary now to thrive in an algorithmically driven world. I might not use that word simply because I think I'm going to be narrating my audiobook.
You don't want to spend 6 hours that day on this section. I think that's fair.
Oh my god. Allison's like, because we're reading Harry Potter to Calvin at night, and so we're on page like 180, 190 or something. And Allison's like, "Wow, you're like, how are you able to read out loud for that long to him?" I was like, "Because I've done audiobooks."
Right. My personal nightmare, by the way. Should I ever write a book? It being so good that someone says you should really do the audio to this. It's like that's my nightmare.
You'd be great at the audio,
but I wouldn't like it. It's the problem.
Nobody likes it. Nobody likes doing it. It's 2 or 3. I think I did a 3-day for one of my books. It's 3 days in a studio, and you can't even eat peanut butter. You know why you can't eat peanut butter? Mouth gets all sticky. Like, all I want, because whenever I'm like sad or tired, all that I want is a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, and I can't even have that.
Oh man,
yeah, that's how bad it is.
Feel bad for you, buddy.
Can't even have peanut butter. I think actually the key, so to start this whole section on like what skills and how do you need to think about getting ahead in the future, I actually think that this entire conversation stems from a central theme, which I'm going to call strategic inefficiency. Let's say that you had a choice of advisors to help your business grow. Okay. You have to choose between one of two groups of people. Right? The first is one. So you could have one person or you could have 10 people. Who would you choose? Probably 10.
One for me.
You'd say one?
Yeah, only because I think I could readily identify the one right person.
Okay.
In certain categories.
Well, that's not what I wrote in the book, so let's...
That's all right.
When you could have one person or 10 people, which would you choose?
Oh, 10 for sure.
Oh, what? Oh my goodness. I didn't know that you were going to say that. Okay, now let me add a new detail to the problem.
Absolutely, no question. Only an idiot would choose one.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, here's the wrinkle to the problem. The 10 people are all hyper specialists. So they've all invested their entire professional lives into mastering one body of knowledge. The one person, on the other hand, hasn't mastered anything. Instead, they've dabbled in all 10 subjects, collecting a pretty good understanding of each. With this in mind, Ren, which would you choose?
Now that I've heard this, John, I'd probably choose the one person.
Oh, wow. It's not like we planned this at all. You know what, Ren? I'm going to agree with you. I'd also choose the single person with a wider range of expertise. Fantastic. You chose that person as well. What a coinkydink. The thing is, when you choose the one person with good enough knowledge in all 10, this person's going to know enough about all 10 things for most consumers, right? Consumers don't need high-end expertise. And what they're also going to be able to do is they're going to know how to make connections between the 10 subjects. Experts in single disciplines, no matter how advanced their expertise, are just simply not valuable in the age of computers. They can be easily replaced. It's not a body of knowledge that's valuable. It's the crossover of multiple ways of thinking combined in new and hard or impossible to measure ways that's valuable. Because in many ways, computers are like your brain, but better. Anything that can be easily taught can be easily taught to a computer. And by the way, this computer works 24 hours a day, communicates with millions of other computers at the same time. No matter how high end that knowledge is, it can still be easily taught if it's single discipline, or if there is single discipline or logical connections between the disciplines. It can be easily taught. Right? So ironically, as technology progresses, the special stuff that makes humans human will actually increase in value. And most notably, this is inefficiency. Humans, you want proof that humans are inefficient? Watch people go jogging. Watch people go jogging. That's how inefficient humans are. That's just a metaphor. Go to like the trail by the water in your city or something and watch people run around there and just be like, this is a metaphor for how our brains work. We're all different. We're all awkward. We all get tired and we all suck. Like, that's how this works.
I try not to run in any circumstance, and that I damn sure don't want to watch other people run. But I take your word for it.
Well, even just like riding my bike, like I'm on my bike a lot, right? And I'm, like cruising along. I feel like I'm doing well. I'm going up a hill, whatever it is. And all of a sudden I hear this music coming behind me and it's coming up faster and faster and faster. And it's kind of like blasting. And this dude just like, zzz, like I'm going uphill. This dude like, zzz, like right by. And he's just like cruising along. I'm like, this motherfucker's on an electronic bike. Like computers are just better at this shit than we are. Like that's all that there is to it.
This is true.
But I mean, here's the thing, right? Like our formal education system emphasizes specialization because it used to be a straight path to a job that can now be replaced by a machine that does the donkey work.
Right.
Used to. But things have changed. David Epstein, in his book Range, How Generalists Triumph in a Specialized World, he said, the more information specialists create, or I added this to his quote, so this isn't him, this is me, or computers assimilate, the more opportunity exists for curious dilettantes to contribute by merging strands of widely available but disparate information. I love journalists because they use more difficult words when easier words will do. Like, why do you need to use the word dilettante and disparate in that statement? Right?
It's because you know the words, John.
It's just because you know the words, or you went to thesaurus.com and like, right, give me another word for different. Oh, disparate. Oh, all right.
Why, bro?
Whatever. Why, David? But the idea still stands, doesn't it? The more information that exists, and the more information that computers are able to assimilate, right, for us, the more opportunities there are for people to merge a whole bunch of random things and combine them in a new way. To me, that's where the opportunity lies. So I've got two pieces of advice for you. I was going to say like advice that you didn't ask for, but I don't know. You listen to this podcast, I guess you're asking for advice. Or you're just looking for the one or two penis references that we said to make it every episode.
Why choose?
Why choose?
I'm always working from both assumptions. Both information and penis references is why the audience here, John.
So one of them's abstract, right? One of them's specific. So we'll start with the abstract one. My abstract piece of advice is do as much random shit as possible. The harder a time you have making sense of where your unique perspective came from, the
Mhm.
better. Explore, talk to people, read widely, gather as many random and different experiences as you can. Over time, these things are going to combine in your brain in ways that you won't be able to make sense of, but will turn out to be unique and beautiful and insightful. Think about how much random stuff I talk about on this podcast. Amber, Ren. Think about how many different countries we talk about, experiences, things, people we meet. You could never replace that with any kind of a computer program, technology. Because there's no rhyme or reason to it. It doesn't make sense. It can't be
Mhm.
measured. It's inefficient. And that's exactly the point, isn't it? So attend a mega church event, even though you're Jewish. I learned a tremendous amount about persuasion.
Right.
I learned a tremendous amount about hope
Oh man.
when all else seems like despair. Get a subscription to a magazine about current events in the United Kingdom, even though you live in Canada. The news that you see is incredibly local. Even if you go on a newspaper on like CNN's website and stuff like that, you're seeing stuff not that everybody sees. You're seeing stuff that's like selected for people who live near you that are like you based off of all these signals. I subscribe. I used to. I don't anymore. I canceled them. But I used to subscribe to multiple physical magazines that got sent to my house from other countries. I don't know. I come across some article about some region in the UK about some way that they dress that for whatever reason is like, okay, well, like that's pretty neat. Why they do that? Why this community has arranged themselves in that way? How am I going to use that? When am I going to use that? I don't fucking know. Maybe I won't, but maybe I will. Hire a boxing coach in Mexico, even though you're a 5'4" pacifist who's never thrown a punch. Like, there's value in all of it. How? I have no clue. None. Maybe you'll learn about public speaking and persuasion. Maybe you'll meet somebody somewhere you've never have crossed paths with, and otherwise who knows somebody, or about a
Mhm.
million other maybes. Or maybe nothing will come of any of it, and it's just part of this glorious human experience that makes being a human so wonderful. That's fine too. My point is, the more random things you learn, the more random experiences you collect, the more valuable you'll become, the more valuable your life will become. It will feel slow. It will feel like you are wasting your time. But what you're doing is something that can never be replicated or replaced by computers because it's too random and it's too inefficient. And herein lies the value. That's the random abstract one. The more specific one is to double down on, I'll call them quote unquote future skills. Ironically, the more technology progresses, the more valuable the human element in business will become. Instead of aspiring to attain industry leading expertise, you got to gather a good enough knowledge and skill set of your field and then combine it with as many of these other skills as possible. So I put them into 4 buckets, 4 categories. Category 1 is communication skills. So in that bucket is writing, presenting, storytelling, and listening. Bucket number 2 is interpersonal skills. So I put into that conflict resolution, leadership, and social intelligence. Bucket number 3 is critical thinking skills. I put into there empathy, judgment, and ethics. Bucket number 4, I'll call them money skills, which is budgeting, wealth management, and investment. I guess here's what it comes down to. In many ways, in most ways, a machine is better, faster, and cheaper than you. The way to thrive isn't to compete on efficiency or even level of expertise. It's the opposite. It's to learn the stuff that's hard to teach a computer. and to focus on the stuff that's hard to teach a computer. And since computers strive for efficiency, the more random, inefficient, and just gloriously human, the better. Did that make any sense?
100%.
Okay, good. Thank
Yeah.
God, man. Good.
Artificial intelligence, computers, learning processors, what have you, that intelligent side, it accumulates information for dissemination, right? The reason for the accumulation is to spread it.
Yeah.
Humans accumulate information for becoming another version of themselves, right? I think that's important. Humans consume for growth, for becoming, for stretching, for evolving, much more
Yeah.
so than than artificially intelligent constructs do. Um, we accumulate information for we accumulate information for connection, not for
Right.
distribution. That's better
And
put.
so let me ask you this, because this is a part that I didn't hit on, that I struggle with, and I've already gotten feedback a little bit here and there whenever I talk about this stuff. Is, you know, well, okay, but if you don't use this stuff, you're going to be left behind. Like, I get that all that other those other things that you're talking about are important,
Mm-hmm.
but it doesn't mean that you can't use these things. The fact that everybody's using them means you also need to use them,
Yes.
or else you're going to be left behind. I don't. I haven't spoken about it. I think largely because I don't quite know where I stand on it yet. So I'd love to hear your thoughts.
I think it's just another way to connect. I think it ties right into what I just said, right? You know, for instance, this example may hit the mark and may be way off, but there are movies, music, and literature that I've read just for the sole purpose of realizing that if I'm not in the know about those things, it makes it harder to connect with the next human, right? Uh,
Okay.
I watched Pulp Fiction because everyone was quoting lines from Pulp Fiction and I hadn't seen it,
It's
right?
a good
So,
movie.
good movie. The information wasn't for information's sake; it was information for a greater ability to extend the human connection, right? So even in the context of using these new, higher, faster, better, cheaper, smarter things, sometimes as a human, I think it's just simply so that I can connect with the next human. Um,
Hmm.
I'm more I am personally more concerned with the ability to hold a conversation with anyone than I am to have information that allows me to teach someone something. Um, the information comes in handy secondarily, but I think on the most important level for me is the promise of the shared experience, right? I think that's where humans connect, not just through intellect for the sake of intellect. Does that make sense?
I also wonder whether it has something to do. This is me thinking out loud. I also wonder whether it has something to do with a theme that we've come back to a few times, which is different people are playing different games, and that's perfectly okay and perfectly reasonable. If you're really trying to get ahead and quote unquote win, scale, make as
Mm-hmm.
much money as possible, right? If that's really your goal, then yeah, jumping on whatever tool is going to help you hopefully get ahead faster might be advantageous. But if your goal is just to try to figure out how to do this life thing in a way that suits yours and your family's desires, like if you want to be famous, that's fine. If you don't want to be famous, that's fine. If you want to comfortably and stress free make a more than good enough living in a way that fills you up with purpose and mostly energizes you, whatever you do, there's going to be some bullshit involved. That's fine.
Right.
But mostly fills you up so you can get up every day and like look forward to what you're doing most of the time and enjoy it. Versus, no, I'm going to do stuff that other people aren't willing to do for the next 5 or 10 years in the hopes that I'm going to make enough money that I can live my life afterwards. I don't think either of those are necessarily better or worse or wrong or right objectively, but I absolutely, unequivocally know which one is right for me.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the first. I'd rather try to figure out a way how to navigate business and time management and everything in a much simpler way, understanding the trade off that I may not be as rich as I might otherwise be, uh, because I'm not willing to give up time and energy that I'd rather have my family or fitness, or I'm just like doing fun creative stuff professionally now. And with that in mind comes a lot of what I spoke about here. You know, it's obviously some of that. I mean, there's very legitimate research to back up, but other of it, it's like very much my opinion, and I'm interested to see what happens. And it's my opinion based off of how I've decided I want to live my life. There's got to be something to that, no?
Yeah, because most people make life choices um, out of societal pressure, right? And I think that's what frees you,
Yeah,
but also binds so many of the people around you because we're chasing somebody else's trophy, right? We
it's a
just
good
we
line.
just it's not something that we ever wanted. We just want to prove to people that we can do it, and that's
Mm-hmm.
that's a lifetime worth of misery. You attain it, and you're even more miserable after you get it. This was never something you wanted in the first place. Now, I think that's where things get problematic for humans, and I think that's one of the reasons that we shun technological advancement because it we're already doing something we didn't want to do, and then this thing comes along and gets in the way and seemingly makes it more difficult for us to win somebody else's trophy, so they'll acknowledge us. Uh, but when you're running your own race, man, you don't give a shit about that. Like you know, Chat Beat, GPT, Open AI. Like, what the fuck do I care? I'm doing my own thing. I'll continue to do it. There's
Such a good
there's
point.
there's some reason to gravitate towards it, sure, but you're much less likely to be a doomsayer when you're running your
Yeah,
own race for your own trophy.
it's such a good point. I'm going
Apparently,
to
do
end it
things
on
the
that
other
and let
way.
you have the last word because I think you really nailed it with that.
Well,
If
I'm
you're
gonna be
looking for another episode to listen to right now, uh, I'm going to recommend you one. I'm going to recommend you check out episode 78. It's called Market Saturation and Competition. And it kind of goes in with this theme, doesn't it? Of, hey, the market's so saturated. Everybody's doing what I'm doing. And yeah, if you're running the same race as everybody else, if you're competing for somebody else's trophy, then it will absolutely seem like the market is saturated. And the answer isn't some hack to make a 491,000,001 fitness post. It's to start to run your own race and figure out how that works best for you. So if you're looking for another episode to listen to, I recommend episode 78. You can just scroll back in your app, check that out. Market Saturation and Competition, it's called. Thanks so much for listening.